What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 136 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends, or click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled, What Are You Recovering From? Welcome back to episode 136 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast entitled, What Are You Recovering From? I want to give a big welcome to my friends in recovery from the U.S., South Africa, and Australia for their participation in this group. Guys, here's your question for today's group. You never recover until you know what you're recovering from. This is an anonymous quote, guys, and I'd love to hear your feedback from that. Ben, would you like to start us out? Sure, David. You never recover until you know what you're recovering from. What a thought. I think as we walk further along in this journey, we find out that it wasn't necessarily a substance or a drink or a website that we were addicted to and needed to recover from, but rather something far, far deeper. The fact that maybe we didn't have any kind of identity or anybody in our life to give us validation. So as a result, we numb the pain of not knowing who we are, and sometimes being numb is better than feeling, especially when feeling hurts too bad. So once you get to the root cause, if you're blessed enough to survive that long in recovery journey without a relapse, you start to learn what you were recovering from was something far deeper than what was on the surface. At that point, I think you can honestly say, I know what I'm recovering from, and that is when real growth begins. So true, Ben. Good way to start us off. When we get to the root cause of our addiction, it's the beginning of life. Harry, what do you think about this question? Well, David, recovery is an honest program. It's an absolute fact that you will never recover until you're honest with yourself and you know what you're recovering from. Until an addict admits that they have a problem and acknowledges that they need help to recover, they will not be in recovery. Recognizing the substance that is causing havoc in your life and seeking a means to stop is the first part of recovery. Us addicts don't like to label the thing that we indulge in and never see the problems that arise from it. We don't see how we change to accommodate the substance and put it first in our lives. Once we focus on the negative of the substance that we are abusing and take the challenge to stay without it, I think recovery begins right there. I agree, Harry. It is so important to see the negative, the death in addiction, in order to begin meaningful recovery. Gary, what do you think? Well, David, it is so true. Although at the beginning of my recovery, I would have questioned that statement. As for me, I thought all I had to do was recover from excessive drinking. Even with drinking up to 3 bottles of whiskey a day, I remained pretty much a functioning adult. I was working for myself, making good money, and was basically no different than any other self-sufficient working man. The only difference was I was drinking from sunrise to sunset and beyond. So far as I believe, the only thing I had to recover from was alcohol abuse. I could not have been more wrong, David. Only by taking an active part in the A to D program did I realize that alcohol abuse was not the only problem or even the core reason for my needing recovery. Alcohol abuse, as destructive as it was merely a symptom of what was really wrong in my life. In going through the From Ashes to Destiny curriculum, I discovered that there were core issues that I needed to deal with. These were beliefs created as a growing boy, which permeated every aspect of my life, and were the true reason for meaningful recovery. A regeneration of self based on realistic beliefs about myself, through which a sense of self-worth became realized by me, and by which positive transformation could take place. So essentially for me, an incorrect core value that I had carried for a large majority of my life had to be revised in a big way, forming the thrust of my recovery. Sure, great stuff, Gary. Many of us in addiction do not even realize we are feeding a negative core value, which is driving our addictive behavior. Eddie, what do you think? David, many addicts live a life of denial. It's just social. I'm fine and I know what I'm doing. But those sort of statements, that's the most dangerous part of addiction, not admitting you have a problem. Once you admit that you are an addict, that's the beginning of the road to recovery. It's understanding and realizing that you cannot quit the addiction on your own and then making the move and asking for help. Recovery is not just about stopping. It's also vital you understand the habits and friends you had along the way during your addiction, which played a huge role in getting you to where you find yourself today. So in actual fact, it's not just the drugs that you need to stop, but the habits and relationships you had. That's having to change your whole lifestyle, and that's creating a new life where it is easier not to use anymore. Understanding your triggers will get you creating a new environment where the ghosts of the past cannot catch up with you again. Good word, Eddie. When we realize the triggers in our old relationships, we begin to break free from the ghosts of our past. Dante, what do you think about this question? David, I think you have to be aware that you have a problem before the problem can be corrected. There's a lot that goes on in the heart and mind of an addict, and one of the biggest things is shame. And I think that once you realize that you have a problem, and then you make an admission to guilt, and then you can make an admission to step forward to get help, then there's truly the beginning of progress. I think people can intuitively know they have a problem, but unless you have a driving force to get better, that really is just conviction from the Holy Spirit for me. You're not going to get better. For me, it was being in the middle of my addiction and where I kind of woke up to the fact that I have a problem, and it just kind of came to me. From that point on, it took a few years to start the path to recovery and healing. But the understanding that I actually had a problem was the first domino to be knocked down in the process of recovery. True that, Dante. Denial that we have a problem needs to stop, and we need to recognize that once we admit we have a problem, that doesn't mean our recovery is instantaneous. It can take us several years. Charlie, would you like to wrap us up today? Sure enough, David. I think if you're trying to change something in one way or another, you must first know what you are working with and have the correct tools at your disposal in order to get the desired outcome with sustainable results. And for me, that's the key, sustainable results. You know, you might try to clean a fish with a hairbrush, but the results will not be the best. To me, recovery is much the same. Without a professional who has been through the disease or has been lost, they will not be able to catch the fish with compassion, understanding, and grace. Without the correct recovery pathway, we may still remain beat up inside, instead of being happy and joyous and free. And for me, without Jesus, we won't be in the perfect and pleasing will for our life, like that fish on the dinner plate. And of course, We people don't want to end up on a dinner plate of life in institutions, prisons, and death. Well, let me get to the point here. We need the person who catches us in this fish of addiction to help us clearly see what we are and how we can be cleaned, knowing what disease you have and how to treat it so we can find healing and recovery. Love that analogy of cleaning a fish and preparing it for dinner. Thanks so much, Charlie. And thank you to all your guys for input on today's session. I think it's so true, and I hear all of you agreeing that the statement that we started out with, you never recover until you know what you're recovering from, truly is a statement that we need to keep in mind whenever we're beginning recovery or working with someone who says they're ready. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you'd like to join an online group or get one-on-one counseling to help you understand what you're really recovering from, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com, or go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. You can keep in touch with what we're doing in From A to D by following me on Instagram at davidfromatod. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.